Hi, my name is Carrie Bradshaw, and today we are going to be talking about hearing impaired students. So, this PowerPoint presentation is basically a cheat sheet to the traits of the hearing impaired, the diagnosis, instructional practices and/or accommodations, behavior management strategies, and assistive technology devices. So, the traits of the hearing impaired, with them having hard time hearing, they don't necessarily hear sounds the same way that you and I do. So these students have difficulty following verbal directions. They have difficulty with oral expression. They have some difficulties with social and/or interpersonal skills. They will often have a degree of language delay, and these students typically follow rather than lead. And these students will usually exhibit some form of articulation difficulty. And if the needs of these students are not met, they can become easily frustrated, which may lead to some behavioral difficulties. For the diagnosing of hearing impairment, there are three types of tests that I found. One is pure tone audiometry, which is where a person who is being tested for their hearing goes into a soundproof booth. They put headphones on that produce sounds of different pitches and frequencies. And then they need to signal the audiologist, who is the one who's, creating the test, on whether or not they can hear those sounds or pitches. With speech audiometry, it's like the pure tone audiometry in that the person being tested goes into a soundproof booth and they put on headphones as well. But rather than a tone or a pitch being sent through the headphone, it's different words at differing levels of volumes. And with this one, the person being tested has to repeat the word back to the audiologist to determine their level of hearing. With tympanometry, and I may have butchered that word, so forgive me, but with that test, that is a test that's typically included in all evaluations of a hearing impaired person. And this measures the middle ear and how the eardrum responds. This helps to rule out congestion or eardrum abnormalities. So with this test, a small probe is put into each ear and it measures how the eardrum responds to air pushed into the ears. For research-based instructional practices and/or accommodations, this one is for reading. So a couple of strategies or accommodations you can provide hearing impaired students is to provide the student with a vocabulary list ahead of time. These students typically spend their time looking up to see if the teacher is talking so they can keep up. But providing them with a vocabulary list ahead of time gives them time to prepare with the vocab that they're expected to learn. The same goes with a reading list. Provide the student with a required reading list ahead of time. That way they can get familiar with the text. Also provide guidance to key texts and, if needed, tailor the reading list for the hearing impaired student. Another important thing to do is to maintain communication with the student's family to encourage reading and vocabulary outside of school. Instructional practices and/or accommodations for writing. Writing can be done on the computer as well. So encourage the student to use a computer with a spell and grammar checker. Provide the student with the opportunity to submit assignments in an alternate format. For example, if the student is fluent in American Sign Language, give them a chance to say what they're wanting to write about in the sign language before they actually go to write it. Another thing that can be done is to provide the student with an acronym to help generate content for story writing. And this acronym is C-SPACE. And what C-SPACE stands for is character, setting, problem or purpose, action, conclusion, and emotion. So all of those elements need to come together to create a good story. To provide the student with an acronym to help with their paragraph writing, the acronym they need to keep in mind is PLEASE. Now what PLEASE stands for is pick the topic, audience, and paragraph types, list information about the topic, evaluate whether the list is complete, and determine how to order the items in the list. A is activate your writing by starting with a good topic sentence. S is supply supporting details in sentences using the items from the list created. And E is end with a strong concluding sentence, and then evaluate the paragraph by revising and editing. And to provide the student help with essay writing, the acronym that they need to keep track of is TREE. Now what TREE means is write a topic sentence, think of reasons to support the topic, examine your reasons, and then think of your ending or conclusion. For instructional practices and or accommodations for math, provide the student additional time for problem solving. As I've said before, the student's going to be looking up and trying to maintain eye contact with the teacher to make sure that they're receiving all of the instructions being stated. Where other students may be working on the problem as the teacher teaches, the hearing impaired student is going to wait till they know the teacher is done speaking. So provide them time to complete the problem. Also, use more than one mode of instruction. Switch it up between verbal and visual. It's hard on the student to always look at the verbal and lip read. It's very time consuming and effort inducing on their part. Provide the student with a list of subject specific jargon and technical terms early in the course. So like with reading, where you provided them vocabulary ahead of time, for math, do the same thing, only just do the jargon that math has. Provide the student with copies of your notes. With them trying to listen to you talk, they don't always have time to write because they're going to miss what you are saying and telling to them. So if you provide a copy of your notes, they will have that to help them. And then also introduce math word problems as informal stories with math facts. Research-based instructional practices and or accommodations for science and social studies. With the hearing impaired, they have trouble hearing. So reduce the background noise for the student to minimize distraction. Provide the student with preferential seating near you. And then also ensure the student can always see your face. It's hard to lip read when you're turned off to the side like that. So always be face to face. And get the student's attention before speaking. If they're looking at something else or looking and trying to talk with a friend, you want to make sure you have their attention so that way when you start speaking, they can look straight at you and be able to see what you are saying. And then also repeat and or rephrase information for the student as needed. Because even if they look away for just a split second, they're going to miss a part of what you say. for instructional practices and/or accommodations for communication and daily living skills. One such practice is speech training. So as I stated earlier, students who are hearing impaired don't hear sounds the same way that we do. So when they talk, they don't necessarily say things the way we say either. So explicitly instruct the student on how to produce sound. Another practice is speech reading. Teach students to use visual information to understand speech. So facial expression, body language, to go along with the lip reading. Again, face-to-face instruction. It's hard for a hearing impaired student to understand what someone is saying if they're not face-to-face. There are alternate ways to communicate rather than verbal. So in this electronic world, they should have access to keyboards, touchscreens, and display panels to where they can communicate with people better if needed. When you're speaking, provide the student with contextual clues when speaking to better aid with lip reading. Because some words, when they are said, they look the same. So to better aid the student to pick which word is correct, offer up those contextual clues. Behavior management strategies. I have 3 strategies that can help with the hearing impaired student. The first one is learning the ABCs. And A stands for antecedents. And what you're asked to do is look at what's going on before the student exhibits a behavior that's considered bad. And B is the behavior itself. What is the student doing? And C is consequences. So what happened from the child's perspective after they exhibited that bad behavior? When a teacher employs this strategy, it gives them a jumping off point to figure out what's going on with the child. The child may be exhibiting this bad behavior to try to communicate something. They don't know how to communicate it, so they're communicating it in a bad behavior way. So it's up to the teacher to sort of stop, take a step back, evaluate the situation, and determine what the child may be trying to say. And based on that, you can consider which strategy is best to implement. One such strategy is to set helpful goals. Many of you have probably heard of SMART goals, where the goal you set is specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and it's timely. So if you can set a SMART goal, it narrows your focus to try to do something that will offset the bad behavior. Selective reinforcement is another behavior management strategy. And, it says time out because you try to give the child a chance to self-regulate their emotions and their behavior. So for possible assistive technology devices, these are only a few of the devices available to hearing impaired students. One is a personal FM system. Now what this helps a student to hear better. So the teacher is wearing a device or a microphone where the microphone takes the teacher's voice and sends the information through FM radio waves directly to a small receiver that is worn by the hearing impaired student. That way they're getting the information everybody else is getting. There's also speech to text software such as Google Live Transcribe, and this helps students to access the information everyone else gets by converting the speech to text, so that way they can read the instruction. Closed captioning on videos. Many teachers show educational videos or pull up clips from YouTube to hit home a point in their lesson. So by providing the closed captioning on the videos, the hearing impaired student can read and keep up with the information that is being broadcast. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation. I hope you have a good day.